Big Red Couch, a podcast about making role-playing games. A group of GMs and players draw ideas from the mystery box and bring their game pitches to you, in which our heroes draw a card.
G-R-B-D-C-O-U-C-H. We are gonna get sued. Especially with the extended version of B-I-G. Gee, we hope you liked the episode. R-E-D. Delighted that you listened to us. C-O-U-C-H.
Y'all have a nice day now.
Nice.
Welcome to the drawing of the Big Red Couch.
Yes, here we brave the dank mysteries of the mystery box. Dank and noisome mysteries of the mystery box, even.
Why do you insist that it's noisome? It's just a
mystery box. I like to imagine it as having ear holes and stains on the bottom.
I think there is an ear hole at one end, maybe?
I think it's a finger hole.
There you go.
That doesn't make it any better.
Yes, the box has a finger hole. Okay, anyway, I will stir it around and we can see what random concept we're doing for next week.
Indeed, engage the Brownian motion.
Does poking your tongue out the corner of your mouth help?
Yes!
Okay.
It's integral.
I can already tell this is something that I wrote down because it's in purple ink.
Oh dear. Okay. The concept for next week is upside down. No.
You can't tell.
Okay. Mecha core receives demobilization orders.
That's Ben's fault.
Yay! Just to clarify, that's Mecha as in giant robot as opposed to City of Pilgrimage?
It's got ancient.
I refuse to specify because that way we can have really interesting ideas for next week.
Okay.
Alright.
One more time, just
Mecha core receives demobilization orders.
Okay then.
let's see what we can come up with for next time.
Some days later...
Hello, listener, and welcome to the Big Red Couch. Today on the mics, we have myself, Craig,
Kev.
Tonya.
And Ben.
and thanks to the wonderful application of door and window closing technology, we do not have the added input of the next door neighbour's line trimmer or the lawnmower for the park a couple of houses up the way.
Or the minor bird who has been very triumphant about sending them away.
Or the minor bird who has been very triumphant about sending them away.
But
yes.
could be trying harder.
Today's topic is on a card that's actually on the other side of the room from me, and also in a box.
So this is
I'm working on it.
the telepathy edition of...
Indeed. I'm getting something about a candlestick and a squid. Oh, wow, I was way off. Okay. Today's topic is Mecha Core receives demobilization orders.
This one is Ben's fault.
Yay.
Entirely Ben's
Is it
fault.
Ben's handwriting?
No, that's my handwriting. I think that one went up on the horde board.
So, who wants to... Actually, it was Ben's one. Does Ben want to go first or last?
First, Ben's fault. Under the bus with you, Ginny.
Fair enough. I don't recall specifically if I had anything in mind when I came up with this one. I think we were just looking for more random idea seeds, so I chucked this one out. I thought there was plenty of opportunities for a game with changes in technology and society, a little bit of action, giant robots, fuck yeah. I may have seen the Pacific Rim trailer about the same time, so...
That did look cool.
I do want to see that film. Because on the one hand, we've got giant robots and apocalypses filtered through the lens of a depressed Japanese man. And then we've got giant robots and apocalypses filtered through a deeply immature maniacal Mexican dude. And I know which one sounds more fun at times.
Yes.
I'm actually wondering how they're going to fit Guillermo del Toro's jar fetish and hanging plastic into
It'll happen.
It's a mecha. It's an enormous metal jar with limbs.
I think that
That's
may be
true.
stretching it, but...
Even be
anyway.
a bit more fixed on the actual having jars around the place.
Oh, there may be a jar inside the mecha. You
That
can
you
climb
put the
into
pilot
the
in.
jar. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, they already had those in Neon Genesis. It was just that the jar was elongated and was more of, say, a pasta container.
It's
So
child lozenge.
It's so newly. Alright, before we get completely sidetracked. Yes, too late. The notion I had was the idea of a returning company of mecha pilots in a setting where I can never pronounce this correct, the idea of having the setting being a slightly alternate future, like the Wings of the Honyamise? I'm
Wings
pronouncing
over
it.
Honyamise.
Yeah.
Or Wings of
Yeah.
Honyamise.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the two. Well, it's up on the show. Wings of...
Okay, and it's an anime from the early 90s, late 80s, where they sat down and very, very patiently redesigned the technology and the setting from the 1930s forward. And consequently, it's quite cool visually. Story's a little bit dodgy, but it's an interesting aesthetic. And the idea that the mecha themselves they're not tanks, they're certainly not skyscrapers, but they are used in engineering applications. They make it very hard to shoot an operator, and the people who pilot them are part mechanic, part soldier. So they're very, very independent sappers, basically.
So they're engineering core.
They're an engineering corps. There may be other aspects to mechanized combat, but these guys they're roughneck, independent, are proud, and used to do fairly non-standard military stuff. Not quite behind the lines, but if you want them to go and secure a bridge, something, to build a fortification, something like that. And they're sort of a reliable, tough kind of group.
Okay. Engineering / water core.
Yeah, they're not so much an elite force as somebody that you rely on to do something slightly less flashy.
Okay.
But the conflict that I was foreseeing is the having whatever conflict they're actually been put together for doesn't eventuate, or they're part of the initial engagement, something that doesn't actually take place. And the military is being scaled back. The war is either over or never happened, and they're being returned to work as engineers, but there is something remaining unfinished. This is the part I haven't nailed down. The idea is that they have to finish off something they saw in the war. Either there was some atrocity committed by their side that they think they want to bring right. Maybe they just stumbled across some loot that is, as far as they're concerned, theirs, that they couldn't actually get their mitts on or couldn't secure properly. And the idea of this coming down somewhere between the movie Three Kings...
I was just thinking that. Yeah.
and the Patlabor series, where mecha are big construction devices, or the police use them, except the traffic patrols have ones that are big sky cranes. They're like big raised platforms that travel over all the other traffic when they've got something to deal with. Sweet! The notion that these guys are sort of tough, independent, the party has a definite mission, but they're suddenly been thrown back into being construction crew, but they have a military mindset. And the idea of them, say, going into a situation where they're either pulling a heist, or they're reclaiming the honour of a fallen comrade, or something like that.
Okay, so it's get to the magic button before the hammer comes down, before you are shipped out, and whether you want to be or not.
That could be a good pressure. Yeah, say if they're in a distant location, they may be doing one last job before everything is rolled up and whatever the entire military campaign is shipped home, or possibly they've been returned home and they've got to complete this task, possibly in the face of paralegal repercussions.
Okay.
Either to secure a fortune that they felt was theirs by right, or to protect the honour of their company, something like that. The idea of the scale of the thing would be that they are somewhat superhuman, but the mecha they control don't knock down buildings, unless, you're actually trying to demolish a building. And
so it's more like a power suit, a la Aliens.
like the cargo loader from...
suit.
It's definitely got military applications, but it's not purely a weapons dispensing thing, or, say...
Yeah, we're talking something that's 9 to 18 feet tall, as opposed to 30 stories tall.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
We're not going in that direction.
Yeah.
Okay.
The idea of having the tech being a bit archaic and having them built like a car from the 50s kind of thing, possibly a Jeep, but the idea that they're something that a person could maintain rather than a squadron of engineers and scientists.
And a full vehicle assembly building. And
Yeah, exactly. Something that...
What are these people up against? Do they have other people also going for the same...
I probably put them against the local law enforcement, possibly a branch of the military. An idea of racing another group to whatever they've got to obtain, because it's pretty appealing.
Yeah. If it's a heist thing, then you've got two options. You can either do it by stealth, so you have to do this under the radar, so you either have to come up for excuses to push back your being pulled out. There's probably a term for that, but my brain's just seized up. Or...
Exfiltration? That's what...
that would be under fire, I think. Or everybody knows you're going to do this. You just have to get it done before anyone can stop you.
Yeah.
So those are kind of two different feels for that game.
Yeah. Or it could be if you've been pulled back and, or they've actually been demobilized, and effectively they're now a construction company with a motto and military insignia on there, I think.
Okay, they get to keep the military gear?
Well, what else are they going to do?
Maybe that's the magic button, is they've been demobilized, and the idea is that they can mislabel some crates so they get to keep the gear.
Possibly the frames, the engine parts. No one else knows how to operate them. They've effectively been demobilized with their kit. It's not quite the same sort of thing as the Mech Warrior, where the mech is like the Knight's steed, but not being sent home with whatever you use to contribute to the effort, especially if they're slightly archaic and could be used in construction or something. But the idea of them doing construction work across the way from the bank or the museum where the thing that they're after is, that would be quite appealing if you're making a heist game.
The idea that occurs to me is the way of doing a kind of probably quite bleak military heist sort of thing, is that the reason that this unit is being demobilized is, if we go with something in the Roman lines, is that the enemy captured a particular standard. And so...
Can't go home without our flag.
Well, they're refusing to go home without their flag because it basically means that, if this is a regiment with a history to it and it's going to be unexisted, a lot of the records are going to be deleted as this regiment fell on a particular date, and they've said, no, sir! And so you've basically got these people who they aren't a core fighting force. They were in the vicinity when it happened, so they know roughly where it is. And have basically decided that, okay, fine, we're all going back into civilian life, but we're going to do something to make sure that the standard lives on.
Yeah.
And so basically you've got people in gear with military applications going up against the remnants of the actual military that they lost it to in the first place, but who aren't expecting them to turn up.
Yeah, the war is no longer hot, but the situation is still difficult.
Yeah. But that could be a terrible mess, and bleakness ahoy.
That could be lovely, and yes, it could be a wonderfully tragic kind of outcome to that sort of game.
Okay.
Craig has no thought.
None at all.
Pretty much got covered, so...
Well, I had several different competing ideas for this, all of which had, at best, qualify as half-assed, so maybe it'll add up to,
slap a couple together.
Yeah. I really focused on the demobilization part of things, and one of the ideas that sparked was that I read an account of someone who was involved in demobilization in the army, and talking about the fact that you can get these things that fall into very different categories, where basically what's going on is a priority, and resources are actually being put into demobilizing things, and you get kind of these crews swarming over stuff like army ants and just breaking them down, shipping them out, packaging them, etc. And then you get the ones where it's much less of a priority, and basically you just get dumped in this gigantic warehouse full of shit, and you know that your job for the next couple of years is to deal with this stuff, but nobody really cares, nobody's looking over your shoulder, you're just there, you turn up and break things down. And I don't know to what extent they were telling the truth or just being really lazy, but just the idea of turning up every day to like one of those warehouses from Indiana Jones that's just filled with boxes of stuff, and each day you theoretically do some things, and then the next day you do it some more, and this is basically going to be the pattern forever. And that sparked off an idea seed from Unknown Armies, which we talked about at the very least in the Christmas episode, because I've been editing it recently, so I know. It's full of all these little story seeds. And one of the ideas in it was these people who were working as valets in LA, and they all have pretty much exactly the same uniforms. They have a shitty job where nobody pays any attention to them, and no one really sees somebody in a valet outfit driving a car, particularly at night. And they realize as a group that they're invisible, and they have access to a huge amount of vehicles which won't be traced back to them, and that they can fight crime. And so you have this... Valet man. But yeah, if you take that back to the demob idea, you've got this crew of mechanically competent people with access to military technology that nobody's really paying attention to or particularly caring about accounting for it at the moment, and no one paying attention to them.
And limitless spare time.
Exactly. So that, that could go in a number of different directions. We've been on a Batman Beyond kick recently, and it's a great show. There's a villain that turns up, I think, once so far, who gets known as Armory, who's just basically somebody who has access to all of this prototype tech from a weapons development company, who basically turns up and is rather a nuisance. And so if you have people who basically have we figured out how to make this weapon man-portable? Not really, but we have bolted it onto a car. We probably shouldn't have done. And it's just, kind of doing a little bit of Mythbusters thing, but with fighting crime, all the way up to another point of inspiration that I've been reading recently that I will totally put in the show notes is a webcomic called Kiwi Blitz, which is about a young woman who is involved in basically the Pokemon tournaments of the time, which is slightly cronied down for safety mechs who get into tournaments on TV, and she takes her mech and actually sticks weapons in it and goes out and fights crime, so that you could have kind of people-level high-technology vigilantes through to mech-level vigilantes, all within the same concept, and that kind of appealed to me. And the other idea that turned up was completely tangential to that, but just the idea of demobilization, rather than things being ratcheted down and becoming calmer, that you change the context for it, and it's actually a big deal. There's a storyline in Woken Furies by Richard Morgan, where you basically have this landmass that's been completely abandoned on a planet with very little in the way of land, because a couple of 100 years ago there was a war over land and resources, and all sides released a wide variety of nasty things which then took over and have been fighting each other ever since. So we've got kind of several generations of autonomous mechanical war machines roaming this place along with viral plagues and other such things, and they're still battling it out. And so when we talk about demob crews, we are talking about mercenary PTSD mechanic plumbers with very high combat pay who basically go into this environment and decommission things to try to gradually make the landscape safe when they don't really know what's there. They know what was there and have records of what was there a couple of 100 years ago. We don't know what it's turned into now.
Okay, so this was two separate
Totally separate things.
worlds that you've built. Okay. Did you have ideas for what one would do in the first one?
In the first one, I think it would come down to, I kind of like the idea of doing something like city generation from Dresden or something else. It is basically saying, you are people somehow involved in demobilizing this military unit. You have access to all of this stuff. What's going on in the world? What kind of things do people care about?
You are the sorts of people who might steal, misappropriate,
Borrow.
Yes.
military equipment in order to go fight crime.
Or possibly...
Tell us
not
about the
even-
world you live in.
Not even borrow, just determine the current mechanical status of prior to packaging and shipping. It would be irresponsible and a waste of military resources
So
to
you'll-
send a mech to a mech out to scrap
When it's
it was
functional.
perfectly functional. That would be wrong.
Okay, so we're fighting crime on a test run. I'm imagining these things with
That
the
is one,
painted...
frankly, rather negative way of looking at it,
I'm
yes.
imagining these things wandering around the city, painted yellow, with those black and white badges for test dummies in various areas.
Yes. I mean, there's all sorts of things you could do with this. I don't really have a kind of idea of what the opposition would be. I could actually see, depending on the kind of game that you wanted to do, this could be a fiasco scenario. You have these people who, as a bright idea, have said, we're going to fight crime in mechs, and you just know that within a week everyone's going to be dead, and in increasingly bizarre circumstances it all goes horribly wrong. But the question is the road to disaster. It all seemed so simple. The plan was elegance in its simplicity.
There was an idea that, a scene that came to mind during Ben's idea that has been reinforced by your one with the breaking down of a unit. And that was just basically the idea of a couple of honking great mechs parked on a street somewhere with various people standing around saying, no, these are not military... Why would you get the idea that these are military mechs? Military mechs are painted in that kind of olive drab, or maybe the desert camo sort of. These are clearly painted in safety yellow. Look, they've got the black stripes. These are construction mechs. We're all wearing hard hats. Obviously, we are construction people here. Still wearing the rest of the fatigue, just we've got yellow hard hats on here. Clearly, we are a construction crew. From the
Perfectly fine,
construction
officer.
company.
We are university students.
Yes, we are a construction crew from the construction company. The construction company has sent us to construct.
I mean, if you wanted to take it in a more kind of comic-y, vigilante, pulpy direction,
That's what I did.
Oh yeah, I was thinking that you could do the whole thing where, you are a demobilization crew who've been taking apart these things and packaging things up and doing everything by the book, and you realize that there is some level of corruption going on where some of these weapons and things have already been on-sold to local gangs and things, and the police are completely out of their depth. What do you do? Yeah.
Now we have a story. That's awesome.
Yeah. Police cruiser versus 20-foot tall mech.
Or just, a gun that's designed to take down 20-foot mechs.
And turns other things into pixie dust.
Yes. Yes. This is a railgun. It used to be on a destroyer, but we found that if you put a handle here and here, you can carry it on a mech. Probably worth bracing against an apartment block before firing, though. It's got a bit of a kick.
Also, anyone on the first floor is going to be annoyed with you.
And deaf.
Yeah, we do need to plug it into the main screen.
I guess you're right that that's far more of a story. That I think if we were doing it in a kind of fatey framework, that the whole basic premise of a group of people who decide that, yes, we'll make the world better by being vigilantes. There's no way that can go wrong. Would generate its own story. So you can kind of do a narrative premise or let's set the players loose with high technology in a normal city. There's no way that can go wrong.
See what they do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas your second idea feels more like a Cthulhu game in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
I'm reminded of a story somebody told me about, probably read off RPGNet, of a World War I sapper game where the GM kind of got halfway through and said, "Guess what? Elder things."
Yeah.
You just tunneled through into a puddle of horrors. Well done.
Woogity woogity boo.
Yeah.
That was a very well done game. I'll see if I can find it in the notes because it was an actual play at Gen Con being run by the people who'd created Call of Cthulhu and with all the players being other people who'd written for Delta Green and things, so that you had Greg Stoltze, we had Shane Ivey. It was exciting, but you had these people listening for other sappers. Because that was the main concern of people digging into the tunnels and things and hearing something that sounds like a heartbeat, that as they dig further is getting closer, except they start digging in different directions and it's still getting closer. Yeah.
Getting closer. No, it's just enormous.
Yeah, it was good.
Also, Cthulhu Tech is something that came to mind when you mentioned the continent of self-replicating horrors.
Yeah.
Never quite got my brain around that system.
I don't
Well,
think
setting.
one can. Yeah.
Settings.
I think it draws on the same things that Cthulhu Tech worked on. It's just, it would be nice if it did so and was good.
Tell us what you really think.
I'm sorry, whoever wrote Cthulhu Tech.
Yeah.
Oh, shall I, or do you want to?
I've kind of been generating an idea while we've been talking, so up until us talking, I had no ideas.
Oh, I could talk about mine and we'll see what happens.
Okay.
Alright. Admittedly got slightly confused between mobilization and demobilization, which did affect things slightly in my thinking. But
Roll with it.
I also got fixated on the word Mecha and the really awful joke of, we are going to make a pilgrimage to a giant robot.
Well done.
Listener, you should see the looks that I am being given, or in the case of the person with their face in their hands, not being given. But the body language is very expressive, and what's mostly expressing is, that is an awesome idea.
That is not what
it
this
is an
body
awesome
language
idea.
expressed.
Okay, so having gone there, I then resolved to try and come up with something sensible based on that, and possibly came up with it. I am imagining a world a little bit in the future of our own.
Mm-hmm.
There has been... The level of technology has risen to the point where mecha are feasible, and indeed vaguely reasonable solution to certain problems. But whether it be through war or environmental collapse or first one then t'other, there's been a general collapse of government. Things have shrunk down to a lot more of city-state surrounded by pretty much uncontrolled territory. So far, so good. Well, not so good, but...
So far, so suck.
Yeah, so far, so suck, but, things are going okay. Travel's a bit of an issue. Getting to places is a bit risky. And then you've got, and I don't know how to pronounce the word properly, but the pilgrimage to Mecca that every good Muslim is supposed to make.
That would be a challenge.
Indeed, which gave me the idea of the mechanized, in this case, literally, infantry units, who are possibly, to a certain extent, I kind of like the idea of them being an individual sort of mercenary company with a contract to guide and protect pilgrims coming from all over the region to Mecca.
There used to be a job title for that, at least with Christian pilgrims, where you would engage a guide / protector for your pilgrimage, called a palmer, because they would wear a little bit of palm leaf
Figures.
pinned to their robe to show their status.
And prove they've actually been there.
That too, yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I'm thinking. So if I sort of set aside the word demobilization for a second, then what you have is squads of mechanized infantry, and mentally I'm thinking of these in sort of the heavy gear line of mecha. So not the Neon Genesis size of a building style thing, but the more 9 or so feet tall
Suits, basically.
suits, sort of heavily armoured suits.
I'd be quite intrigued by not, if they're rather than a mercenary company, they're actually a religious order.
Ooh, that'd be cool.
Maybe they were formerly military and things have obviously gotten past the point where the gigantic military structures work, but they're actually...
Monks.
Yeah.
In fact, CAD file with Mecha.
Indeed.
It feels a little odd to have Christian monks taking people on the Hajj, but...
The exact cultural basis you can work to your own satisfaction, but the imagery is pretty cool.
Yeah.
The idea
It kind of is.
with the
Warrior
these
mecha monks.
mecha swathed in like, they're not quite robes, but they have the sort of banoose wraparound kind of things on, striding through
I did
sandy
get
wastes.
stuck with that image as well. Just the mecha with the loose, the loose around the shoulder and chest wrap and the enormous weaponry.
Yeah. Standing guard over pilgrims making their way across.
The idea of them being a religious order, whether they are sort of hardcore, this is a monastic order, I don't know what the equivalent term, if there is one, for Islam is, or whether they are simply a group of devout enough people, devout enough soldiers who decided, well, the country or possibly countries who we were fighting for don't exist anymore. Let's do this.
Yep.
That one takes it a bit in the Twilight 2000 zone, where it's kind of a, well, none of the countries really exist anymore. Want to hang out?
Why are we shooting each other again?
Yeah.
And do you have any food?
Yeah, does anybody here know how to grow a potato? You do? Brilliant.
You're our best friend now.
Yeah, come along, Admiral Kropotkin.
That'd be pretty awesome.
Anyway.
I kind of want to play in that game.
Woo. Yeah, going to the demobilization bit, at that point, depending on how you want to do things, if they are a sufficiently organized group that there is an overriding religious or monastic structure, then the demobilization bit could kick you into possibly a fun, if you like that kind of game, power struggle within the church sort of game. That you've got these heavily armed soldier monks out there, they're guiding the pilgrims and everything, and that's great, but there's people who are just a little bit concerned that this lot have got a lot of power. They've got a lot of actual secular ability to fuck things up power going on. And
Firepower.
Okay.
they
This
don't
is-
like it that much. And effectively we're talking retelling of Knights Templar territory to all
That could
intents
be
and
classy.
purposes.
Mix up with a bit of...
What happens when somebody decides, actually, we believe that order to be heretical.
Well, this is something that kind of mirrors a book I'm reading at the moment called Dissolution, which is about Henry VIII looking at all of the power and monies that the Catholic Church had in England at that time and saying, you know what, I want me a slice of that. You're not churches anymore.
I wave my magic wand.
Yeah.
No, not that one.
Yes, that one.
Yes.
By the way, yo, my peeps, who wants to live in an abbey? I'm giving out land for freeze, yo.
Another thing that puts me in mind of is Canticle for Leverwoods, but with giant robots, which is, I can't see anything wrong with that.
No, I mean,
It's a good book.
it's a good book, which can only be enhanced by giant robots, he says.
Everything,
kind of dirty inside.
everything can be enhanced by giant robots. It's a rule. Come on.
Watership down. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Spider-Man.
Bunnies
Well, in fact, Spider-Man 2, so
piloting
yes.
Grant Morrison's We 3, the Watership Down edition, and now I just want to cry forever.
Woo! That would rock.
All the fields.
Yes, but you were fed by depression on some fundamental level, so...
That's true.
My Little Pony.
Yes.
Awesome. I have pictures even, but,
How would that even work?
You've seen the Timberwolves episode?
That is true.
Yeah.
I'm just imagining pony mechas that really can only be worked by...
Magical quadrupeds.
They can only really be worked if you have telekinesis anyway.
Or is it
I think they're powered by friendship.
Whereas it reminds me of...
Screw you.
what does it remind you of, Kit?
Oh, it reminds me of the artwork I've seen floating around of Scoots as Simon from Gurren Lagann and other things. So,
I recently saw one of Fluttershy's Shinji.
You're a horrible human being. I don't want that image in my brain. Fluttershy talking about dad batters? No. And I broke him. Excellent.
And now we go into Tonya's idea.
Please start talking.
Okay, this is something that has been germinating over this conversation because I just haven't had ideas. Again, this comes from the idea that demobilization has to be a problem, has to be the beginning of a story, and I've been having real difficulty making that happen. But while you guys have been talking, I thought about a situation where another planet, if you have a settlement crew who may not be willingly settling a planet, and if you have an environment where you need a small number of highly mobile, effectively guards/police in their mecha, and at some point those people get an order saying, okay, we're done with this phase, you guys are citizens now.
So
among a citizen population who have been rather antagonistic to these individuals, what do you do?
So they are the guards for deportee convicts or refugees, and suddenly all they've got is like a shiny badge and a giant robot and no authority otherwise.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And if the orders come from another planet, then there's nothing to stop absolutely everybody from having heard that.
True. Or the orders consisted of everything's fine here, bright flash static.
All there is you, your badge, and your people. You're not getting any backup, you're not getting food shipments anymore. You have to figure out how to go from the face of galactic government to just these guys. And that's about what I've got.
Interesting.
Gives you a tension point, and places to go, but I really don't have ways in or ways forward from there. So
I'm going to buy Apocalypse World and let you read it.
Okay.
Because I think that might solve all of your problems right there.
Yeah.
Because that is, from what I've been hearing about Apocalypse World, that is a scenario, pretty much.
Sweet. Okay.
I really like that idea. My brain's kind of spun off in a different direction with it, as always happens. In terms of if demobilization is the problem and you've got this kind of the integration is the issue.
Mm-hmm.
You could also have a thing where what society can look like, if you have something like the Civil War or Vietnam or anything else where you have this issue of integration where you've got people who are ex-soldiers. They may not have been willingly soldiers in the first place, but now they are ex-soldiers, quite possibly with gear that nobody bothered making them return because it was all disorganized in the wake of it, trying to reintegrate into society. So that on the one hand you've got people who are actually just trying to be just these guys, and on the other hand you've also got people who are basically setting themselves up as local crime bosses.
That's a good point, actually. And you've got
Sorry. I just realised that we've been talking about giant, building-sized things, suits, etc. What if the mecha in question are pretty much full conversion cyborgs being demobbed inside of armour? Because that's what they are built out of now.
Okay, so you're thinking more like
Appleseed?
Moretsu Pirates, Shinitsu.
Or Appleseed.
Okay.
Yeah, things.
So these guys cannot survive without the suit.
Yeah, well, yeah, to take the suit out off them would be like, good job, soldier, we have to take your legs back now.
Right.
Look forward to your civilian life as a brain in a jar.
That would kind of suck as a game.
Well, no, the Brain in the Jar game would probably suck, but the idea that, say they're war heroes, say all credit to them, they fought well, they have gone back into society, and they are made of metal. That would be quite an integration story as well.
Okay.
On the other hand, I kind of want to know, I kind of want to see the game based on, to a certain extent, the A-Team, where a bunch of demobilized brains in jars have a daring breakout from their nursing home, steal bodies, and go to live underground helping people for hire.
If you can find them, you might be able to hire. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that would be brains in jars.
These are the B team.
Sorry, I think we're over budget on awesome. That would be brilliant.
That would be.
You can hire the Grey Team.
Okay,
I'm just imagining the opening montage with sort of basically the face and name. What you've just got is brain, name tag, brain. It's exactly the same shot, just a different name.
One bubble slightly more, maybe.
Yeah.
It's like all these the huge action sequences intercut with Brain and Jar, completely static.
Oh yes, the emotion shot. Yeah.
Brain and Jar.
Sorry, you were pulling us back on track somewhere.
I was pulling back to an idea that I was trying to develop. Yeah, the idea that you've got some people who have been told, okay, you're not the cops anymore. It hadn't occurred to me till Craig said it, that you basically have these people who have the choice at that point of attempting to reintegrate, or we're just going to steal a bunch of stuff and go make another settlement over there and be raiders of some sort.
So a
bandito camp, but yeah.
We need to get a copy of Apocalypse World.
Kind of do.
I mean, we could do. I'm riffing increasingly Wild West with this, and how the Wild West intersected with the Civil War, so that you've got all of that stuff filtering out into the society. So there's all sorts of things you can do with that concept. I like it. I also like the starting concept that you had of the people who've been told you're not in charge anymore. Good luck with the lynching!
Yeah. If that's something that everybody's heard, then you've got a populace who are also saying, what, wait, we can do anything? I'm expecting a couple of weeks of misrule before a new government settles out.
You've won the hearts and minds of the people, right? Haven't you? Oh, awkward.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man.
Your next shipment of colonists will be expecting a city and will be arriving in about 100 years. Get on that, will you?
Also, we promised them theme parks. Nothing flashy, see what you can do.
Well, to which my response is, okay, well, we need to make the food supplies last at least that long, and we'll invite them into Cannibal Land. It'll be great.
Well, I'm done. How about you guys?
I think we should stop now. I'm just going to go back to the grey team, and that's not going to be good.
Was that my terrible pun?
How do I put this?
That was
yes.
That was your name.
Ooh.
No, there was the only other thing I thought of is possibly if you run a really depressing game, you run a demobilization of sentient robot warriors game, possibly with the robots scampering around trying not to be disassembled.
Ben is fueled by sadness, listener. We need to get him some pills.
If we use something like Robo Rally as the combat mechanic.
Ooh,
That would be awesome.
that would be
Don't
fun.
you have
If you could stand
Robot
the-
Red?
I do somewhere, yes. That was there.
If you could stand the Tachikoma Goodbye song.
Oh, that'd be beautiful.
All the fields.
All the fields.
No, disassemble, Stephanie.
I'm going to punch you now.
Yeah.
It only makes me stronger.
So, shall we close out this episode before we have to punch Ben into his ascendant phase? And,
I don't want to see his final fall. Anyway, yeah. Thanks for joining us, folks.
See you next time.
bye.
Yeah.
Hello, listener. Craig here, just with a quick announcement about the RPG Podcast Listeners Survey. This runs for the entirety of June. I'm going to put a link in the show notes. And the purpose of it is to gather data on tabletop RPG podcast listeners, their listening habits, and their gaming habits. It'd be entirely awesome if you went, checked it out, filled out the survey. Thanks very much. Next time on the Big Red Couch.
So this is about holiday games, effectively. Holiday-themed games.
Sure.
Yeah. So games themed around particular holidays rather than games to do on a holiday, which would be any game.
Want to hear more of our shenanigans? Then go to hoarde.net and click on the button that looks like a couch. The Big Red Couch is released under Attribution, Non-Commercial, Share-alike 3.0 Unported from CreativeCommons.org. All music on the show comes from the album Universal Fluff Theory by Krakatoa. Visit them at krakatoa.com or follow the link from our page. See you next time.